The probate courtroom was so silent that the scratch of the court reporter's pen sounded like a verdict, each stroke tightening the knot in Elizabeth's stomach.
Miss Morales, I've reviewed the bank statements you and your attorney submitted. There's just one question I need you to answer. Did your father know this would happen?
Elizabeth felt the blood drain from her face. She had prepared for many questions, but this one undid her. It came from a place she thought no one else knew. Jeffrey leaned back in his chair, a thin smile playing on his lips. He thought he'd already won.
He's still so sure of himself. Even now, with everything on the table.
I won't ask again, Miss Morales. The court is waiting.
Her attorney touched her elbow, but Elizabeth barely felt it. The room seemed to narrow to a single point of light, and in that breathless pause, the entire story turned, because to understand why that question mattered, you have to go back 6 weeks, back to the day Thomas Morales died and the executor, his son Jeffrey, first reached for the money. The Morales family had always been lopsided. Elizabeth Morales, the younger, learned early that responsibility would find her before praise ever did. In every Christmas photo, their father, Thomas, looked at Jeffrey with a hope that never quite found solid ground. Thomas was a carpenter who smelled of cedar. He once told Elizabeth he worried Jeffrey wouldn't understand building something from nothing. On the 14th of November, a heart attack took Thomas. Elizabeth held his hand at the hospital. Jeffrey stood near the door, phone in hand, face unreadable.
He didn't cry. He just checked his phone, already thinking about what was his.
4 days later, a copy of Thomas's will arrived at Elizabeth's apartment. The attorney had already read it. Jeffrey Morales was named executor.
Dad knew I could handle the estate. It's what he wanted.
That evening, Elizabeth stood outside the family home. The porch light was off. Something cold settled in her stomach.
Dad told me once that Jeffrey couldn't hold on to $1. Why would he give him the keys to everything?
She put the will in a drawer beside her bed. 2 weeks later, the first bank statement arrived. The envelope was postmarked 2 days earlier. Inside, a thin sheet, the executor's monthly estate accounting. Her finger slid down the list. Funeral costs, property taxes. Then a line that made her stomach drop. Loan to executor, $410,000.
He didn't even wait for probate. That money was Dad's whole retirement.
She grabbed her phone and dialed. 3 rings, then his voice, as if he'd been expecting her.
Jeffrey, what did you do? There's $410,000 missing from Dad's estate account.
Relax, Liz. It's for expenses. I am the executor. I have to manage things. You wouldn't understand.
What expenses cost $410,000 in 2 weeks? What are you covering?
The house needs work. There are back taxes, legal fees. I've got it handled. Stay out of it.
He thinks I'll just roll over, like I always did when we were kids.
She ended the call. The bedroom felt smaller. The statement lay on the table. The number still burned in her eyes. Elizabeth Morales walked into the law office of Elena Rivera, carrying a manila folder and a decade of family disappointment.
An executor can't just take money. Under the probate code, you have the right to request monthly accountings. We'll send a formal demand.
Elizabeth drafted the letter that afternoon at her kitchen table. Every word felt like a declaration of war. The reply arrived within the week. A second statement, showing only minor expenses. Where had the $410,000 gone?
He's hiding the rest. I need proof of every dollar.
On a cold Thursday, she drove to the family home. The key wouldn't turn in the lock. A new deadbolt glinted in the porch light. Jeffrey had changed the locks without telling her. She stared at the new deadbolt, her own key useless.
He's taking the house too. He thinks I'll just walk away.
Photograph everything. The locks, the house, every statement. Build a timeline. We'll need it for the court.
Elizabeth began a binder, each page a silent witness. The most important document was already sealed, waiting. 3 days after the locks were changed, a real estate sign appeared on the front lawn. Elizabeth saw it from her car window and felt her chest tighten. The number on the sign was $180,000. The house was worth at least $260,000.
He's dumping it to a friend, below market, before probate even starts.
She got out of the car and walked to the window. Inside, the living room was empty, boxes stacked against the wall. The next afternoon, she returned. Jeffrey was on the porch, keys in hand, clapping a man on the back.
You are gonna love this place. Just a few touch-ups, and it's all yours.
He's already sold it in his mind. He doesn't even care that Dad's tools are still in the garage.
She took 26 photos that week. The sign, the listing online, the empty rooms through the glass, each one printed and added to the binder.
This isn't just greed, it's contempt. He thinks I'll sit by and let him erase Dad.
Late that evening, she called Elena Rivera. Her voice was steady. The binder was full. The next morning, Elizabeth signed the petition for removal and surcharge. The pen pressed hard into the paper, each signature a small act of war.
This petition seeks removal as executor and a personal surcharge for the $410,000 he took, plus statutory damages. The court will set a hearing date.
They filed it before noon. The clerk stamped the document, and the clock started 14 days until the hearing. A process server handed Jeffrey the petition in his office parking lot. He stood frozen for 10 seconds, then ripped the envelope open.
You think you can drag me to court. You don't know what you are starting, Liz.
You took $410,000 and locked me out. What did you think would happen?
I told you, legal fees, house prep. I am the executor. The court will laugh at this.
She ended the call. A text arrived seconds later. The text read, "You'll regret this." Elizabeth saved the text and added it to the binder. For the next 14 days, she barely slept. During those 2 weeks, Jeffrey worked the phones. Cousins, aunts, even the pastor at their father's church received calls, whispered half-truths about Elizabeth's greed. She stopped answering unknown numbers. The voicemails piled up, pleas to be reasonable, accusations of shaming the family name.
They don't know what he did. They don't want to know.
At Elena Rivera's office, they rehearsed the hearing. The attorney cross-examined Elizabeth, as Jeffrey's lawyer would, sharp, dismissive.
He'll say it was an advance on his inheritance, that you are just bitter. You need to stay clinical, show the judge the pattern.
The night before the hearing, Elizabeth pulled out a small box of her father's things, items the estate hadn't inventoried. Inside, beneath a faded leather Bible, was a sealed envelope. Her name in her father's handwriting. He had written only one line: "If Jeffrey tries to undo my work, remember the workshop. Trust what I built, not what he says."
He knew. Even then, he knew Jeffrey would fail him.
She placed the letter in the binder, behind the bank statements. The morning of the hearing, she dressed like she was going to war. The courthouse corridor smelled of floor wax and old paper. Elizabeth walked beside Elena Rivera, binder tight against her chest.
Nice binder. You think a stack of paper is going to save you?
She didn't answer. The heavy doors swung open, and the courtroom swallowed them whole. Judge Alice Morrison entered from chambers, her black robe settling like a rumor of finality. The court rose.
In the matter of the estate of Thomas Morales, case number 2472. We are here on a petition for removal of executor and surcharge.
Your Honor, we present bank records showing a single transfer of $410,000 from the estate account to the executor's personal account, and a contemporaneous listing of the family property at a severe undervaluation.
The courtroom monitor lit up. The $410,000 transaction hung on the screen, circled in red.
Your Honor, that was a temporary loan for immediate estate expenses. My sister has always been dramatic about money.
Mr. Morales, the court will examine the full chain of disbursements. You'll have your turn to explain.
The binder sat open at Elizabeth's elbow. Beneath the bank statements, the sealed addendum waited, still unknown to Jeffrey, still locked in the court's own vault. Jeffrey took the stand, a performance in a tailored suit. He swore to tell the truth, then stepped into the trap.
You described the $410,000 as a temporary loan. Can you show the court any loan document, any promissory note?
It was a verbal understanding. We don't need paperwork in this family.
Yet for a house sale, $80,000 below market, you had a formal contract with your friend within 4 days. Why the difference?
I was handling urgent estate matters. The money was to protect Dad's assets.
The judge's pen stopped. She looked over her reading glasses at Jeffrey, a stare that could freeze water.
Mr. Morales, you claim verbal permission from your father for a $410,000 transfer. When did this conversation occur?
About 2 years ago. He said I should take what I needed.
Elizabeth's hands tightened on the binder. She felt the letter beneath her fingers, the one that proved her father knew Jeffrey would lie. The courtroom hummed. Judge Morrison set down her pen. Her next question would not be for Jeffrey.
Did your father know this would happen, Miss Morales?
Yes, Your Honor. He knew Jeffrey would try something like this. That's why he filed a sealed addendum 2 months before he died. The addendum names me successor executor. It says, if Jeffrey misuses estate funds, I take over immediately.
We request the court retrieve and unseal the document filed with this court on the 14th of September.
A bailiff carried a thick envelope to the bench. The red court seal was unbroken. Every eye followed it. Judge Morrison broke the seal with a small letter opener. The envelope opened with a dry crack that echoed.
The addendum reads, I, Thomas Morales, having witnessed Jeffrey's fiscal irresponsibility, declare that if he misappropriates estate funds, he is removed, and Elizabeth shall be executor.
Jeffrey's face drained of color. His confident smirk vanished, replaced by something raw and terrified.
Dad built a safety net. He hoped I'd never need, but he trusted me to use it.
The judge closed the file and called a 30-minute recess. When she returned, the ruling would be final. The courtroom emptied into the marble corridor. Elizabeth stood near the window. Binder clutched like a shield, the addendum's words still ringing.
Liz, wait, please. We can fix this. I'll pay back the money. Most of it. Just drop the petition. The house. You can have the house. I'll sign it over. Just don't let the judge rule. It'll ruin me.
You drained Dad's accounts before probate. You locked me out. You listed the house to a friend for nothing. And now you want mercy?
I am your brother. Dad wouldn't want this. He'd want us to handle it privately.
No, Jeffrey. He built a safety net for this exact moment. I won't let you dismantle it.
Don't negotiate. Anything he offers now, the court can order with teeth. Your only move is to let the judge rule.
He's still trying to control the outcome. He doesn't regret what he did, only that he got caught.
The bailiff's voice cut through the corridor. All rise, court is reconvening. The 30 minutes had felt like hours. Elizabeth walked back into the courtroom, the binder heavy under her arm. Whatever the judge decided, she knew her father had already voted. The gavel fell twice. Judge Morrison re-entered with a stack of papers, the addendum on top, the seal still bright.
The court has reviewed the sealed addendum and the testimony. Given the gravity of the allegations, I will issue my ruling tomorrow morning at 9.
Jeffrey's carefully constructed world had crumbled. He sat rigid, the bravado replaced by a blank, blinking stare.
More waiting. He's never had to wait for anything in his life. Maybe that's the first real punishment.
Court adjourned. Elizabeth walked out into the evening, the binder now a quiet wait. The city lights seemed indifferent. In her apartment, she sat at the same kitchen table where she'd first opened the bank statement. The binder lay open, her father's handwriting visible. She reread the line her father wrote, "Trust what I built, not what he says."
You built the addendum that's now in that courtroom. That's what I'm trusting.
She slept in fragments, the courtroom replaying behind her eyelids. By 4 a.m., she made coffee, dressed, and waited for morning. When sunrise broke, the binder was packed again. Whatever the judge decided, Elizabeth knew one truth. Her father had already spoken. At 8:45, Elizabeth and Elena walked into the empty courtroom. The morning light through the high windows fell cold and clean. Jeffrey arrived moments later. Alone, his suit was the same, but the man inside it was wrecked. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Morrison emerged, her face unreadable, a single sheet of paper in her hand.
After reviewing the evidence and the sealed addendum, the court finds Jeffrey Morales in breach of fiduciary duty. He is hereby removed as executor, effective immediately. He is personally surcharged $410,000, plus statutory damages, at the legal rate from the date of misappropriation. Furthermore, under the decedent's no contest clause, Jeffrey Morales is barred from inheriting any portion of the residue of the estate.
Jeffrey's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in his life, there was no argument, no angle, just silence.
The money, the house, the inheritance, none of it. He's been erased from Dad's will.
Elena Rivera squeezed Elizabeth's shoulder. The binder had done its work. The gavel struck once. The sound echoed like a nail in a coffin. The courtroom remained frozen for 3 heartbeats, until Jeffrey Morales shot to his feet with a sound that was half shout, half sob.
Your Honor, please. There's been a mistake. I can explain. I have more documents.
Mr. Morales, you have exhausted the court's patience. The ruling is final. Bailiff, escort him from the courtroom.
The clerk stamped the order with a practiced thud, adding the surcharge to the court's ledger. Elizabeth watched, the binder's weight now a finished thing.
He's nothing now. No executor, no inheritance, just a debt.
A uniformed bailiff took Jeffrey's elbow. As he was led out, his polished shoes scraped the marble, and his eyes found Elizabeth one last time. The doors closed behind him. In the gallery, a few relatives whispered. One shook his head and walked out.
He'll have to liquidate. The court will freeze his accounts until you are paid. You are the executor now.
The house is mine to sell. Fair market, and his own home will be part of the payment.
Elena gathered the exhibits. Out in the corridor, the morning sun had risen higher, and for the first time in weeks, Elizabeth felt she could breathe. In the weeks following the ruling, the court enforced its order with precision. Jeffrey Morales learned the weight of the word surcharge. His luxury sedan was the first to go, sold at a loss to a dealer who sensed desperation. Then the investment accounts, mutual funds, his retirement, liquidated in a week. Each transaction shrinking the chasm. When the bank drafts and asset sales reached $290,000, the court required the remaining balance. What was left was his own house. Elizabeth's attorney drafted the deed, and Jeffrey Morales signed away his front door. Elizabeth watched from across the attorney's conference room, the pen in his hand, shaking. A week later, the clerk recorded the deed. The estate was whole. The full $410,000, plus statutory damages, had been clawed back, dollar by dollar.
He paid with everything he had. I didn't want his house, but he left me no other road.
Now, as successor executor, the first thing Elizabeth had to do was walk into the family home and turn her father's key. The key turned with a familiar click. Inside, the air still smelled of cedar and dust, the shape of her father's life. The mantel photo caught the afternoon light. Thomas, Elizabeth, Jeffrey Younger, before the fault line cracked open.
He built this house. I am not letting Jeffrey's price determine its worth.
She hired an appraiser, then a realtor. The for sale sign that went up bore a fair number, $260,000. Within a week, a young family walked through, their son running his hand along the banister Thomas had turned himself. The offer came at asking price. Elizabeth signed the papers at her kitchen table, the same table where she'd first seen the $410,000 withdrawal. At the closing, the proceeds, nearly $270,000 after fees, were wired into a trust account Elena had prepared. The trust was named for her father, the Thomas Morales Community Workshop Fund. Its purpose, to support the high school woodworking program at his church.
Every dollar from this house will go back into the kind of work he loved. It's what he would have built.
She walked out of the bank with the final documents, and for the first time, the weight of the binder felt fully lifted. The tools were still in the garage, coated in fine sawdust, arranged on the pegboard, exactly as Thomas had left them.
He wouldn't want them locked away. They were made to shape wood and teach hands.
She loaded the lathe, the hand planes, and the set of chisels into her car, and let the fiddling finish naturally. The workshop was a converted classroom filled with mismatched benches. Elizabeth's boxes filled the bare spaces. She mounted the heavy toolbox on a work table and uncovered the brass plaque. It read, "Donated in memory of Thomas Morales, who built with faith and cedar." The youth pastor gathered the students. He read the plaque aloud, then pointed to the lathe. "This will cut our first bowl." A tall boy stepped forward and ran his palm along the bed of the lathe. Elizabeth's throat tightened.
He would have shown them how to turn a spindle in an hour. Now his tools will.
The pastor announced the shop would be renamed the Thomas Morales Woodworking Workshop. The teens broke into applause. Elizabeth slipped out the side door during the clapping, the sound following her into the quiet corridor. 6 months passed. Autumn leaves gathered on the church steps. Elizabeth returned on a Tuesday afternoon. Through the window of the workshop, she saw a boy at the lathe, the same tall boy, now guiding a chisel with steady hands.
Dad's lathe is still spinning. It's teaching hands he never met.
The brass plaque caught the light, donated in memory of Thomas Morales. The work below it was young, unpolished, and exactly right. She stepped back without going in, leaving the lesson to the hands that needed it. The question the judge asked that morning, "Did your father know?" had its answer long before it was spoken. Thomas Morales had known his son, and he had built a different inheritance, one of cedar, law, and quiet purpose.
I didn't just get the money back. I got to watch his legacy start to build something new.
She walked until the church bells rang, then turned the corner and was gone. The binder, finally, could be closed. The binder sat on a shelf now, its spine marked with a case number. Inside, the story was written in full. The judge's question echoed across everything that followed. Did your father know? He knew enough to file a document his son never saw coming. That sealed envelope was not just paper. It was a father's final protection, a device that waited in silence until truth demanded it speak. When it spoke, it didn't just remove an executor. It restored a legacy Jeffrey tried to erase, a house, a trust, a craft. The family might never heal. Relatives might still whisper, but the numbers on the ledger had been corrected. Elizabeth didn't need the binder anymore. She had the sound of a boy learning a trade on her father's lathe. Sometimes the best revenge is not a shouted word, but a quiet mechanism, a document signed before a notary. A tool in a young hand, a house turned into a fund. In that courtroom, the judge asked one question. The answer was already filed, and it changed everything. That was the inheritance Thomas Morales intended. Not one his son could drain, but one built to last. The justice wasn't loud, but it was complete. A new bowl sat on the workshop shelf, slightly lopsided, signed with the teenager's initials and the date. Elizabeth received the photo and put her phone down without typing a reply. Some things didn't need words. Jeffrey's old house, sold in spring. The new owners painted the door blue and planted rosemary near the mailbox. She didn't drive by. She'd closed that ledger the day the deed was recorded. The probate file was archived in the county basement, sealed addendum scanned and returned.
I have a copy in my desk. Not because I am afraid, but because it deserves to be remembered.
The workshop fund had already purchased a new band saw and a set of carving knives. The family photograph was the only thing Elizabeth kept from the house. She had it reframed for her own wall. The story of the judge's question had become part of the family's reluctant history, one told in fragments, always circling the truth. But in the workshop, no one told stories. They just listened to the hum of the lathe, and the shape of the wood, and the quiet. Elizabeth placed the framed family photograph on the shelf beside the binder. The two objects now shared the same quiet corner. She hadn't spoken to Jeffrey since the courthouse. The silence was easier than either of them could have imagined. Outside her window, the city moved on. Cars, pedestrians, the ordinary hum of lives not paused by probate. She thought of the boy at the lathe, the bowl taking shape under his hands. That was the future now. She wondered if her father had ever sat in this same silence, knowing what he'd set in motion. Probably. He had always been a man who built things to outlast arguments. She picked up her keys. It was a Sunday, and she wanted to hear the church bells. The bells rang at 6, clean and unhurried. She stood on the sidewalk, hands in her pockets, and listened. When the last note faded, she turned toward home. The binders stayed on the shelf. Some inheritances aren't measured in dollars. They're found in the shape of a bowl, the quiet after a bell, the key to a door that once was locked. The years ahead would bring their own weight, but the days after the bells were lighter than she had ever known. The lathe would hum on Thursdays, teaching a new generation of hands the grain of the wood. The photograph stayed on the shelf, dust catching the light, a quiet witness to a family that had fractured and, in its own way, found resolution. The judge's question had been answered, sealed in the addendum, and now settled like the dust in the workshop. There were no grand farewells, only the quiet truth that the right thing, however slow, had finally been done.
He built a bridge I didn't know I needed until I had to cross it.
And far away, in a gymnasium that smelled of cedar and youth, the lathe turned on. A boy lifted his bowl from the bed, still warm from the friction, and held it to the light. He would never know the full story, but he would know the feel of good wood, the rhythm of the chisel, the name on the plaque, and that, in the end, was enough.